Part 3 of this tutorial addresses the issue of revising the list of files in your unit file set. Initially, you created a set of files, and now you have decided that you need to insert a new file. This could be quite challenging. Remember, you must maintain the file naming standard to keep the files in a hierarchical order. In this tutorial, we will walk you through the process of adding both existing files as well as newly created files to your file set. The learning objectives include demonstrating how to add existing files to your unit, learning to rename your files using the unit file generator, and ultimately to save them once they've been renamed. Let's start with adding material that you've already developed for one of your classes. You may or may not remember that the preferred file format to use for your unit documents is Microsoft Word. But let's suppose you have a PDF, Excel, PowerPoint, or picture file that you want to include in your file set. How do you do that? The process is quite simple. When you create your initial list of files in the unit file generator, include a placeholder document. By creating the placeholder document, you are creating the file name that you will use for your existing file. You will use this placeholder document file name to rename your file, and you will then delete the placeholder document. Let's walk through a more specific example on the next slide. In this example, let's assume that you had previously developed a unit test that is in PDF format, and you'd like to include it in your unit. To do this, include a file placeholder when you generate your files. The placeholder is meant to create the file name that you can use to rename your unit. Even though the unit file generator will create a Word document for you, you really only need the file name of that placeholder document rather than the file itself. As shown on this slide, a placeholder document was created with an appropriate file name. Note that though the original file has an appropriate name, it does not comply with the file naming standard that we are using. To rectify this, we will use the name from the placeholder document and apply it to the original document as shown. By doing this, the file now conforms to the naming standard and will be listed in the hierarchical order on your wiki. Once the file is renamed, the placeholder document may be deleted. Now let's talk about adding more files to your file set. In this scenario, let's assume that you had previously created a number of files for your unit, but now you'd like to insert a single worksheet associated with Activity 1. In this case, it is not a big problem because you can simply name the new worksheet as Activity 3.1.01a. You can then rename worksheet 3.2.03a to 3.2.03b and worksheet 3.2.04b to 3.2.04c. To rename a file, simply right-click on the file name, click Rename, and then type in the new file name. Remember, as you rename the files, the file naming standard requires unique letters for each activity. This example is a pretty simple case, and it is easy to rename these manually. Let's look at another case on the next slide that is a bit more complex. In this example, let's insert an activity sheet as the second activity. This is more complex than the previous example because now you will have to rename all of the activities located after this new activity. This will require that you rename a total of 8 files. Once again, you could rename these manually. Alternatively, you might use the unit file generator to rename them. We will walk through that process, and then you can decide if you would like to rename them manually or use the unit file generator. The file addition process we will use with the unit file generator is listed here. We won't dwell on the process here as it is described in more detail on subsequent slides. You might take a moment to review the process here and then move on to the next slide. To get started with renaming, copy the files that you would like to rename to the Rename Files folder on your desktop. Since the Rename Files folder is automatically created by the unit file generator the first time you run it, you may need to open it prior to copying your files. When you copy your files to the Rename Files folder, include any file that is a valid file type such as Microsoft Office files, picture and video files, PDF files, and so on. Since you're only renaming the files, the unit file generator does not disturb the file content. If you haven't already done so, open the unit file generator located in the Templates 2014 folder on your desktop. Once you've copied the files you would like to retitle to the Rename Files folder, click on the Rename Files tab in the unit file generator. Then click the Load button. This will insert the file names of each of the files in the Rename Files folder onto the worksheet. When you click the Load button, the file names will be entered in the green area on the left-hand side of the worksheet. If the files were created using the file naming standard, the unit, lesson, activity, and worksheet information will be gleaned from the file names and will be entered in the work area in the center of the sheet. In this example, a mixture of file types were included for illustration purposes. Notice that in the file renaming area, the yellow cells, some information is missing. This is due to the fact that the file names of these files do not conform to the naming standard. That is not a problem, as the purpose of this exercise is to rename files according to the standard. On the right-hand side of the sheet, you will see the new file names that are beginning to be created. In order to complete these file names, you must add more information in the yellow cells, including the lesson, activity, and worksheet information. You might also edit the unit number, title, author, creation date, and the file content descriptor if desired. It is not recommended that you change the file extension in column F, as it may cause unintended consequences when the files are renamed. As you enter the information for the files in the yellow cells, the file name in the right will begin to fill in. It is important that you understand the file naming standard so that you can visually inspect the file names that are created. If you determine there's a problem with the file name, edit the information in the yellow cells. The red bar at the bottom of the slide shows the example used in part 1 of this tutorial as a reminder of the file naming standard. The control buttons are located at the top of the sheet and are used to manage the worksheet information. More information on the use of these buttons is included in the next few slides. Now let's walk through an example of creating a new file. You might use this when you need to add another document to your unit file set. To create your unit file, go to the first empty row below the last entry in the worksheet. Add the lesson number, activity number, worksheet letter if there is one, and the file content descriptor. After each entry, use the Enter key to confirm the entry. The file extension .docx is the file extension for a Word document and will be entered automatically. At this time, a Word document is the only type of document that can be created by the unit file generator. Once you've added the new file info, click the Sort button. This will move the new file into the correct alphabetical order in the list of files. Once the file is in the correct alphabetical order, it is easier to edit the lesson, activity, and worksheet information to maintain the correct hierarchical order. To achieve the right order, you will need to edit the lesson, activity, and worksheet numbers and letters. In this example, we have a duplicate entry for Lesson 1, Activity 2. We will start with the second duplicate entry with our editing. Since we only added one activity, we will add a 1 to the appropriate activity number. That is, for Activity 2, we will make it Activity 3. For Activity 3, we will make it a 4, and so on. When finished, it should resemble the numbering shown in the example to the right. Make sure you inspect the file names on the right-hand side of the worksheet to see if the new file names make sense. These are the file names that will be used when the unit file generator renames the files. Once you are satisfied with the file names, click the Create button. When you click Create, a new folder is created in the Unit Archive folder on your desktop. You can identify this folder by the date and time appended to the end of the file name. If you double-click on this folder, you can view the newly created files. The only thing that has changed from the original files is the file name. The files that you originally copied into the Rename Files folder are still there and have not been altered. If you decide to make additional changes to the file names, simply repeat the process described over the past few slides. If you added a file during the renaming process, you may need to add the header information as noted on this slide. If you are only using this file as a placeholder for an existing document, you can now rename your document and delete this file. This concludes part 3 of this tutorial. You should now be able to add some of your existing documents to your unit file set, as well as rename your files to maintain the desired hierarchical order as specified by the file naming standard. Maintaining this hierarchical order will make it easier for everyone involved in the process of reviewing and storing your files. If questions should arise about your unit content, please feel free to contact your assigned SEAMS coach. For technical questions about the unit file generator, please contact me, Jack Broering, using the contact information noted here. You might also let me know of any improvements that you would like to see for this tutorial or the unit file generator. Best wishes as you develop your unit materials.